"No Irish Need Apply" signs were ugly reminders of the prejudice that disfigured American society at that time. And whereas, in spite of these persecutions, Irish Americans fought valiantly in the Civil War and other conflicts to protect the freedom of all Americans and to contribute to the success of this country. And whereas, in 2021, 31.5 million individuals in the United States, about 9.5% of the population, claimed to be of Irish descent, including approximately 4,522 people in Kittitas County. And whereas Irish immigrants and their descendants have contributed greatly to the enrichment of all aspects of life in the United States, including military and governmental service, science, education, art, agriculture, business, industry, and athletics, including 9 of the people who signed our Declaration of Independence, 23 presidents of the United States, musician Jim Morrison, painter Georgia O'Keeffe, Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, and author Tom Clancy. And whereas we honor the long history of the Irish and the Irish American contributions to the establishment of Ellensburg, and we recognize those Irish and Irish Americans who currently contribute daily to the strength and vibrancy of our diverse community. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Ellensburg does hereby proclaim March 2023 as Irish American Heritage Month in Ellensburg, and encourages all residents to join in this observance with celebration, friendship, and understanding with our Irish and Irish American neighbors. Signed this 6th day of March, 2023. Nancy Lilquist, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you. Our next proclamation is the Natural Gas Utilities Workers' Day.
Comment on that.
Certainly, if you'd like to comment on the
Yes.
Irish
Thank you very much.
proclamation.
My grandfather, John Mulherin, who is from Balladureen, the city of Balladureen in Roscommon, would turn over and start moving around in his grave if I didn't stand up and thank you for this proclamation and the appreciation for it. And yes, and I hope it's a good event. I hope, as they say, you take down the door. And what they say when you take down the door in Ireland is people had parties and events from on a regular basis. And just like the house my grandfather was born in, which I visited, the floors were tamped earth. And the thatched roof was gone by the time I was there in 91. But taking down the door has to do when you have parties and itinerant musicians and come by, you want to dance. Well, the tamped dirt doesn't work so well for dancing, for a bounce. So you would take down the wooden door and you would dance on the door. And that meant you had a pretty good party if you took down the door. So
Okay.
I would urge taking down the door of events of the activities. I'd also, I don't know, and I'm uninformed, does the city of Ellensburg have a sister city in Ireland?
We do not.
Well, that's something I'd urge you to investigate and institute, because there's a lot of similarities with Ellensburg and some of the places in Ireland, and it would be a great connection for people here. So I would say, take a look at that as an option.
Thank you.
Oh, my name is Mike Barrow, and my address is 2002 Chestnut, number 127. And I'm here to speak on something else, but as I said, I couldn't have gotten by without making a comment.
Well, thank you for that. So our next proclamation will be read by Councilmember Nguyen.
Natural Gas Utility Worker Day, March 18th, 2023. Whereas in 2015, the American Public Gas Association began recognizing March 18th as Natural Gas Utility Worker Day. And whereas the date was chosen to remember the New London, Texas school explosion that occurred on March 18th, 1937, leading to the widespread odorization of natural gas and the increased emphasis on safety. And whereas the safety is vital aspect of natural gas distribution and the employees of the distribution companies endeavor to make natural gas delivery as safe as possible. And whereas the attention and dedication of our utility workers is essential to ensuring the safety of natural gas distribution. And whereas the Natural Gas Utility Workers Day and throughout the year, the city of Ellensburg recognizes the vital services our natural gas utility workers provide to their communities. Now therefore, be it further resolved that the city council does hereby proclaim March 18th as Natural Gas Utility Worker Day and expresses its appreciation for the gas department staff and their dedication to ensure safe delivery of natural gas within our community. Signed the 6th day of March, 2023, Nancy Lopez, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, so there are no
Do you want
awards
to
or
do public comment on that also?
I should offer public comment. Would anyone like to comment on Natural Gas Utility Workers Day? Um, So there are no awards or recognitions. So we're at approval of the agenda.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose amending the agenda, switching items 11A and 11B. Vote.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda with the amendment of switching item A, which is the financial status report, with item B, which is the repart master plan.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry. I think the motion was to amend the agenda.
To the amend
first,
the
yeah.
agenda first. Okay. So right now we're just amending the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
I too will vote aye. Okay, so now approval of the agenda.
Madam Mayor, I move the amended agenda.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the amended agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Two will vote aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I move the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I too will vote aye. That motion carries. So we are at page 52 in your packet. And if, I don't know if there was enough, but there might be some out on the table back there. This is our board and commission appointments. There was. City manager, do you want to?
Sure, I
present the
can,
applicant?
very much so, yes. So the council, per your rules, and you have a process to appoint new board and commission members. The Public Transit Authority Committee, we refer to as PTAC, has an opening on the committee. And the applicant was interviewed by the committee, also attended a meeting, and the recommendation is to appoint the applicant is Amy Spitsness for the Public Transit Authority.
I can also speak to that if you'd like.
Certainly.
As the chair of the PTAC, I attended the meeting and with our director, manager, Betsy Dunbar, we interviewed Amy. And we're really excited for her interest, and I think she will bring a lot to the PTAC. She brings a unique perspective and skill set. I think she works with Central Washington Disabilities, and mobility and accessibility within the community is one of her everyday tasks for her clients. So we're very excited.
Is that committee full now?
I believe this will complete the roster.
That's what I thought. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the appointment?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second to approve appointment of Amy Spitsness to the PTAC committee. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment? All in favor, or, yeah, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I too will vote aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We are at citizen comment on non-agenda issues. Is there anyone who would like to approach the council to speak? And I have a sign up list. So would have 3 minutes to speak to the council about something that the council can do something about. And you should identify yourself before speaking and provide your address. So first is Jessica Shad.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Schad. I'm an associate professor of sociology at Utah State University. My address is 1055 Thrushwood Drive in Logan, Utah. I'm just here tonight to introduce a project that we are collaborating with Washington State University on, and my graduate student, Alex Theophilus, is also here. And over the next couple of months, we're going to be holding some listening sessions and doing interviews with different civic, business, and government leaders on different factors that play a role in the well-being here in the Yakima Basin. So the project is called the Yakima Basin Wellbeing Project. And so if you see flyers, or if somebody from Washington State University or Utah State University reaches out to you, don't be totally surprised. And we're just looking to better understand what's going great in your community, what could be improved. And we're hoping that this can help create more resilient communities in the region. And we do hope to share our results back to the community once we're done talking with people. So if you hear from us, don't be afraid to join in some of the conversations that we'll be holding as the spring and summer progress. So thank you.
Thank you. Next signed up is Steve Verhey.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Steve Verhey, spelled V-E-R-H-E-Y. I'm watching you, TV screen. My address is 1801 North B, the letter B Street in Ellensburg. And I'm here tonight to talk about the flags that we see downtown and in Ellensburg on national holidays during the summer. Some years ago, Boy Scout Troop 413 received permission from the city council to drill holes in city sidewalks and use them to display flags as part of a fundraiser. They display flags for each national holiday between Memorial Day at the end of May and Veterans Day in early November. A couple of years ago, a new national holiday was added, Juneteenth. And last year, the Boy Scouts chose not to display flags on that day. Now, this organization has permission and in a way represents the city council and the city in this service. And we all love to see those flags, but it's not a good look to not have flags posted on that particular day. And so I want to make sure that everyone is aware that that's a thing. The Scouts send out invoices for their fundraising at the beginning of April every year. And I have been in communication with them, although not recently. I have no reason to think that they're going to be covering Juneteenth again this year. If necessary, I would like to see the city council withdraw permission for Troop 413 to use those holes in city sidewalks and open it up to an organization who perhaps might be willing to do all of the national holidays between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Tyler. Briefly.
Juneteenth is the day that word of the Emancipation Proclamation reached the last of the slaves in the United States. It is one of the holidays that has the most directly to do with real freedom of all of the holidays. You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
The next is Tyrell Nislin, but it's about Reed Park and that's on the agenda, so you're on later. And Michael Barrow. Okay, Community Garden
And community orchards.
and orchards.
Yes, yes.
So 3 minutes and you see the little timer?
I see it
Okay.
clicking away already, right in front. Yes, my name is Michael Barrow and I'm at 2002 South Chestnut, Unit 127, Briarwood. And I'm a member of their activity group association. And one of the what they asked me to do was move forward with the idea of getting a community garden and community orchards out around the areas where we live. We live in an area next to Bi-Mart in that area. We kind of refer to it as the senior ghetto. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of available parks, walk paths. There's not really too much for that we see around the city. We need those out there. We need that. And they're now developing the canals project there. And we're trying to reach out to the planners here in the canals to incorporate some of those needs in their plan. But the situation with the community orchards, we've reached out and have had meetings with staff already to Ellensburg staff to discuss available surplus lands, available water, and other features that the county, the city could assist in moving forward with the community gardens. And the concept we're working with is mobile gardens. We're using orchards, apple totes, orchard bins, and cherry bins, and using those to have the gardens in. And they're quite movable too. So we're looking for temporary access to land. There is a strip in between Bi-Mart and Briarwood that we've been looking at as a possibility. And then water too. The last one that had community gardens, the city provided water, which would be a great help. On the community orchards, we're working and with the and both with the garden, we're working with master gardeners of WSU. And they've been assisting us. And I thought I came up with the idea of community orchards, but no, this is happening in England and Maine and other places. And this area is greatly suited for having community orchards. And because they grow here. Fruit trees grow here, plums, pears, apples, they're all here. So we're well suited to have community orchards here. And but I would ask for your support. I'd like to have it on the next agenda coming up, have it on the agenda, and reaching out to you and giving you a more complete briefing on this concept. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Barrow.
You bet.
That completes our list. So if,
Excuse me, I could not find on your website a place to sign up to present. And,
Oh.
If I could, I really.
yes,
Oh,
you can,
thanks.
but if you could speak into the microphone.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
My name is Marcia Rorty Greenfield. Rorty is Irish, and I live at 6 Viewpoint Road on Radio Hill. I wanted to speak a bit about the issue of how the city is going about addressing our crisis in affordable housing. It's so worthy. It's wonderful that you're doing it. In fact, we will have currently planned 4 cottages, 2 stories directly behind our fence with a shallow backyard. We're raised above it. My husband and I both strongly support the project, but we are very fearful that it's not being done wisely. And there've been, probably I can't cover them all, but so many things that have gone on that have sowed distrust, bitterness, rancor, by the city council, unfortunately, and they are completely avoidable mistakes. I looked at Reed Park. I saw how carefully you all are working with community members. I wish you would do the same for affordable housing. There are always grouchy people who will fight you tooth and nail, but not all of us will. And many of us would like to be brought in. We have good ideas we can support. We also have various needs. The reason that I sound nervous and I'm exhausted is that I feel very scared that our particular needs will get ignored. This August 15th City Council meeting did not go well at all. Insults were actually given. People in the neighborhood are very, very disturbed. Our son has autism and cognitive impairment. He does not have the ability to control many of his emotions and behaviors. He can become dangerous. Last year, he attacked an aide who went to the ER, took months of medical leave, and transferred schools due to the trauma. He's delightful, but there are issues. I'm very, very frightened that because we haven't felt heard, that our desire to collaborate will fall on deaf ears. He will be injured, other people will. And I truly want to impress upon you that it would be heartbreaking for you, I believe, if you fail to take action. I didn't cover it all, but I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone, and just, Marcia, the sign up is just on is just a piece of paper. As you walk in, you don't have don't have anything on the website. Maybe we should, I don't know. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to an issue that is not on tonight's agenda? Do you have something not on tonight's agenda? No. So the question was, if you want to speak about Reed Park, do you have to sign up? And the answer is no. Okay. I am looking online and that person, there's only one person and they don't want to speak. They haven't raised their hand. Okay, so we are moving on to item 9A. This is an ordinance amending the city code regarding utility fees.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. Derek Mayo with the Ellensburg Public Works and Utilities Department. Before you tonight is second reading of ordinance 4911, revising sections 9.92.300 and 9.92.400 of the Ellensburg City Code. First reading was held at your last meeting on February 21st, and the proposed ordinance will remove the last remaining duplicated fees, permit fees from the water and sewer from code that are also included in the Public Works Development Standards, just to reduce potential future conflict. So with that, staff recommends council conduct second reading and adoption of ordinance 4911, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions for Mr. Mayo? Is there anyone here who would like to speak regarding this ordinance, proposed ordinance? Seeing no one, council, do you have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move second reading and adoption of ordinance 4911.
Motion and second to conduct second reading and adoption of ordinance 4911, revising Ellensburg City Code regarding utility fees. The discussion and roll call.
Perfect. Beauchamp,
Yes.
Elliot,
Yes.
Goodlow,
Yes.
David Miller,
Aye.
Monica Miller,
Yes.
Wynn,
Yes.
Lowquist.
Yes.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Ellensburg, Washington relating to chapter 9.92 utility fee and credit schedules and amending sections 9.92.300 and 9.92.400 of the Ellensburg City Code.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Second is ordinance 4912. This would be first reading, and it is regarding streeteries, parklets, and sidewalk cafes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council, Terry Weiner, City Attorney. Before I begin my formal report, I just want to make a comment about potential conflict of interest discussion we've had several times. It's specific reference to Councilmember Beauchamp, who made an inquiry about her participation tonight. So I consulted with MRSC, which, as you know, provides advice to cities and counties throughout the state, based on the nature of the ordinance and the discussions that we've previously had. And the conclusion that both myself and the advisor from MRC reached is that for ordinances that are of general application, so that they could apply to anybody, that a council member, even though it may impact them more than another council member or a member of the public, can participate both in the discussion of the ordinance and, if they choose to, the vote. We reviewed the ethics law, which is found in chapter 4223 of the RCW. And because this ordinance doesn't convey special privileges or benefits to any particular person, it's an ordinance of general application. As always, a council member is free to abstain from a vote if they don't feel comfortable, but I just wanted to, this is a little bit different than the discussion we've had in the past. And so I want to clarify that before you begin your discussion so that all the council members were aware of this advice. So with that said, we're here to talk about first reading of ordinance 4912, which would regulate streeteries, sidewalk cafes, and parklets in the city. It's been before you in one form or another several times in the past. The origins of this, as you know, but for the benefit of the public, were the temporary permits that were issued for streeteries back in mid 2020, when due to the pandemic, there were pretty tight restrictions on the number of patrons that could be in a restaurant and cafes. And out of that grew a longer term program of temporary permits here in the city. It's been through several study sessions and at least a couple of different variations of the ordinance. The outcome of that most recently was the ordinance that was brought before you back in December of last year, which did not receive a first reading. So instead, council requested that a subcommittee consisting of a couple of council members, as well as staff and members of the Landmarks and Design Commission, meet and go through some of the issues that council had raised about the ordinance. Those meetings occurred in late December and the earlier part of this year. And then at a later meeting last month, there was a discussion about what those recommendations were and how to implement them in the ordinance that we're bringing before you tonight. So you've seen in the past this particular ordinance, but I wanted to highlight some of the changes that are in this that were not in the previous version of the ordinance. The first of those is that the streeter applications under this ordinance in section 4.14A sub 030D7, that's at page 71 of your packet, will not require a review by the Landmarks and Design Commission. Instead, the general public will be notified of the application and allowed to provide public comment to the community department director. That publication will occur through our social media sites and our website. And then that public comment will be limited to the subject of whether or not the application for a streetery conforms to the design elements that are in the ordinance. So that's the first change from the previous ordinance. Also, number two, if you're following along on page 2 of my report, current streeteries operating on a temporary permit will need to be removed later this spring. And the reason for that is, as we've informed you previously, the downtown will be undergoing a slurry seal project, including the streets where the streeteries are currently located, and that project obviously can't be done unless those streeteries are removed. And that was, as a reminder, a condition of their temporary permits is that they might have to be removed for maintenance and street work. The streeteries thereafter, and this goes back to the question previously about how do we grandfather in and what do we grandfather in for streeteries that currently exist. After the slurry seal project is complete, the ordinance provides that those streeteries would then have to conform, if this ordinance is adopted to the, they'd have to conform to the design standards that are in this ordinance. And they would do that by submitting design plans to the extent that they're not already in conformance. The changes would then be submitted to the community development director under section 4.14A's 030D9. There was a discussion about materials, prohibited materials, and it was noticed that the material vinyl had been left out of the prohibited materials. And there was an intent to include that so that we don't have vinyl panels, clear vinyl panels, which are not consistent with the rest of the materials in the allowed list. So that was added to the prohibited list in section page 72 of the year agenda report, section 4.14.040B. There was number 4 is that the finance department, we told you a couple meetings ago, we were looking at the streetery fees and should be included. Not quite yet. We're going to get to that a little later. You can put them up now. We talked about the fees, which were originally set at $25 per month per stall. Based on analysis by the finance department, the ordinance adds a fee of $750 per month as a concession fee. And I'm going to discuss those in greater detail in a little bit. So hold that thought if you have questions about that, and we'll get back to that. But one thing that we also had to add was payment of the leasehold excise tax. And what a leasehold excise tax does is if this property were in private hands, obviously the property owner pays a property tax. Since the right of way is considered city property, there is no property tax paid. So the Department of Revenue, State Department of Revenue requires that a leasehold excise tax be paid for the value of that property based on the calculations for the fees. So that is another fee that's been added since last time. And then another change that we made was the discussion around a solid wall and screening for the streetery. So a wall or of some type is required on the 3 sides that the sides that face, 2 sides that face parking and the side that faces traffic, to create a barrier of sorts between the streetery and the traveling public. Within that, there's also a requirement to have sort of an open space from 30 inches to 42 inches. And the purpose of that open space or visual, space is to allow a car that's backing up next to the streetery and a car that's coming down the road to be able to see each other as one backs out or the other is passing. So we need to have sort of a clear view through there. So we added that in section 4.14A 0.050 sub F sub 2, and that's at page 73. So those are the major changes from the previous version of the ordinance. There are a couple of little minor ones and just some stylistic corrections. But overall, the ordinance also will establish, obviously, a sort of a comprehensive regulation for the streeteries and the parklets and the sidewalk cafes. Again, the sidewalk cafes have been allowed for several years. They were previously codified in another section of the ordinance, so we're just moving them into this new chapter for consistency and so that people can find the regulations in one chapter. In addition, the sidewalk cafes right now are charged under the existing ordinance $25 per table annually. As a reminder, as we move through this, the temporary permits for streeteries by resolution expire on March 31st. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the fees and how we got there to the amounts you see. So as proposed right now, the streetery fee is $700, the concession fee is $750 per month, in addition to the $25 per stall per month. So we went and looked at, I'll wait for this to come up on the screen so people are aware. We did look at other cities and what they are charging, and I want to preface this by saying this is not a comprehensive list. Some cities haven't done a very good job of publicizing their fees for one reason or another, but this is what we were able to find. There are other cities, and you can see there's really no methodology here that is used consistently. The fees are sort of all over the map. The low is zero. Some cities are still not charging anything. They started these programs during the pandemic, and they're still evaluating their programs. That would include Walla Walla, for instance, has not decided what they're going to be charging. Tacoma is still waiving fees, they call it, under their COVID permit program. On the high end, you can see Seattle, they charge $1,500 as an initial review fee, and then they charge $1,500 for the review. And then if it's a metered space, it's a flat fee of $3,000 per year per space, plus I think it's $1.56 per square foot for the space used. So by their own estimate, on the high end for a metered space, it's $4,700 per space. If it's an unmetered space, that $3,000 fee goes down to $300. So you can subtract $3,000 or $2,700 from that and do the calculation. So the only methodology that, and the numbers aren't consistent, but you can see some of them, such as Port Townsend and Spokane charge based on the square footage. Seattle does too, but I just approximated their fee there. And even the space, the per square foot cost is not consistent. And the reason for that is some of them use different methodologies to calculate how they get to the square foot. Port Townsend took a assumed cost to build parking spaces and then amortized it over a number of years and came up with their figures. So, and some cities just have flat fees, such as Bellingham. You can see theirs is $150 one-time fee and $50 annual. So it has nothing to do with the actual value of the space. So given all of those variations, we came tonight and I think you have it on your dais, an alternative of different fees that could be chosen. So in this table, we're showing that the fees range from that could be imposed by council vary, or the options are for what's in the report, which is $750 per month as a flat fee, and then different options of per day. So in other words, that $25 equates to $750 a month. At the next line, it's $15 per month, and that would equate to $525 per year, and so on. So at the low end, we calculated $225 as the concession fee. And you can see how that translates down below to the total annual fees, which includes all of the fees, including the concession fee, the parking spaces, the leasehold excise tax. And so on the high end, as currently proposed, it's a little over $10,000. And at the low end, it's $2,815 approximately. And we wanted just to present those options to you and let you know that there's not a methodology that is being proposed necessarily by staff. We're really trying to offer some options based on input we received after this went to print. I also want to point out that you'll notice that we did not add a similar fee for sidewalk cafes. And the reason for that is because the sidewalk cafes, as I said, were already incorporated into the Ellensburg City Code. It's merely being reincorporated into this chapter, but staff intends to bring bring back if this streeteries ordinance goes forward, we would intend to bring back an amendment at a later time as soon as possible to add a similar fee to the sidewalk cafes. But because this ordinance was focused on the streeteries, we didn't feel it would be fair to do that tonight without providing a more public process and an opportunity for input from those businesses and the community as to what those fees might be. So that's why you don't see them here in this ordinance tonight, but certainly we intend to add that for the sake of consistency and fairness. The ordinance has several other improvements, which I've listed in the report to the way that the temporary permits are being handled right now. But I think I'll end with that and then open it up to questions from council.
Are there any questions? Council? Public comment? Both ways. I do have a question. So the current 750 per month concession fee was based on what? How did the finance department get to
Okay,
that?
the finance department looked at what Parks was charging for a concession fee. For instance, if there is a food truck out at Irene Reinhardt or another event, by code, they're charged a concession fee, and they basically took that fee and plugged it in here. You know, most of those events are a day or 2 days, so you're talking $25 or $50. But that was the methodology that they used.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this issue? Please begin by stating your name and address.
My name's Russell Colmore. I live at 105 Benton Street, Kittitas. I appreciate what the council has done, in putting together all the information about the eateries. What I haven't heard is whether the council really wants these eateries here in town. At the point of COVID, these owners struggled to keep the doors open, to keep people fed, keep people safe, keep their employees employed. Taking these eateries away and having to rebuild is going to be costly. Is the city considering helping those eateries move? They move houses. So can these eateries be lifted up when that street needs to be paved, placed in a different location and reinstalled? So we're not having to break down an entire eatery? Thank you.
Thank you. Blake?
Good evening, Blake Collins. I live at 106 West 11th, Ellensburg. I'm here representing the Pearl Barn Grills Streetery. I've taken significant amount of time to read the ordinance and the proposal that, and I think it gives a legitimate opportunity for how we handle these going forwards. I think Russell's point as far as the logistics of the timeline of the later spring chip sealing or sealing, I think there is definitely going to be a legitimate challenge as far as deconstructing, storing all in like a relatively short amount of time. I think the graph where it showed the monetization breakdown in comparison to Edmonds and Seattle, and was interesting that ours was, proposed twice Edmonds and 10% higher than Seattle. Those are things I'd like to at least be brought to consideration. Now, if we move forward as far as timeline of making sure that we take care of the roads and get a chip seal down and moving those streeteries, I would hope that if we do as a city council and as a city want to move forward in streeteries, then the process of redesigning and executing a modular streetery that can be put together, taken down and stored correctly is absolutely attainable. It's going to take some time to create that design and create those specs so that way it can be executed. So I would I see the opportunity of moving forward with this with the way that it was proposed. And I think the cost can be talked about. I think that later spring chip seal, I would love to see that happen after rodeo. For the sense of then we can take down those streeteries. We get 6 months over the winter to design, propose, and assemble what we want to do for our next application and apply that for the spring. So I do believe that there is a path in this, and I think we're close as far as the steps to it. The sudden decision that the price, went up ninefold, and the fact that this would have to be done with this in this next quarter, I think is a more of a statement that the council doesn't want these streeteries to exist than it is working with them to make the process come to fruition. So love that this conversation is happening. And I know we've all been doing this for a while now at this point, but there's a light here. And thank you very much for at least hearing us. Have a good night.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to streeteries?
Pat Kelleher, 6530 Wilson Creek Road. I'm a little confused as to what a parklet is, and there's some spaces and loading zones, and I don't know what a parklet is, reading your ordinance. Had a chance last month to go down and just watch the downtown for the first Friday art walk, or the first art walk, whatever day that was, and boy, those cars were just whipping up and down Pearl Street, and not one streetery was in use. So all those people had to circle the block, go park somewhere else. There was an event downtown. It was happening, and we're sending people away. Parking, I would say it's available 24/7. There's certain restrictions on the signs. But by giving businesses use of this public space, it can only be used when they're open. And if you look at the percentage of use, it's atrocious. The spaces have basically not been used when the temperature dropped below 40. So, they're not being used. To take them out of the design review process in your historic zone is okay. Let's take a building out of the historic, the landmarks review process. I mean, where's your consistency going to be? I don't understand. The fees you're getting there, the parking study says that a parking space is worth $1,800 per year replacement cost on the study you did. So you're going to be losing 26 downtown parking spaces with Unity Park. So you're very close to you'll soon be at a tipping point for parking in downtown, and everybody will go, ooh, God, it'd be nice to have another space. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to streeteries? Council, do you have any questions?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the streeteries as written, except for the fee structuring and the timing of the street story. Am I allowed to do that now?
Yes, you are, but I would suggest it be done by, have a motion for the ordinance first, and then it can be amended.
Okay.
Do you have specific amendments? Because, I guess I'd like to ask Public Works, whether it's, feasible to shift the timing of the chip seal.
Sorry, we were discussing
Is it,
the timing of the chip seal.
yeah, and Derek is coming to answer that.
Derek, yeah, thank God he's still here.
Madam Mayor, can you repeat that question? Only heard part of it.
Yeah, so we're being asked to shift the chip seal project from spring to fall. Is
Okay.
that,
It's definitely a possibility. What we're planning now, currently is to build it, construct it with the two asphalt overlay projects on Main Street and also on Wildcat Way and bid them together. And we typically do those projects summer when traffic's lighter, and college is out. Just because we see a noticeable difference, decrease in traffic. So we typically, I mean, our plan was originally to do it this summer. But, it's, yeah, definitely up for consideration.
so your preference would be before,
After
The
graduation.
after
and before rodeo
graduation.
is kind of where we typically try to line up our construction season.
okay. Okay, thank you.
I was going to follow up question.
Sure.
Related to that, you have any estimate? Obviously, to split the bid, what additional cost should we expect by separating this out? Would it be in the realm of 25%, say? Just
Ballpark guess, 10 to 15% probably.
Okay.
And then
Okay, so, but I understood you could still bid it together in September after rodeo before CWU comes back.
We would probably need to do the overlays separately because we have to wait 30 days before we put the permanent striping down. And that gets closer to winter if we started after Labor Day. The downtown, the slurry seal, we'd be able to do a striping right after the application of the asphalt.
Okay,
if
But
I may
it
add.
could be separately, yeah.
Yeah, and if I may add, the slurry seal project is pretty disruptive. And so having traffic, we're going to be closing down grid sections of the streets. And so it'll be fairly disruptive for the community and during the summer. And so planning those projects when it is the lightest traffic time is probably in the city's best interests.
I think so. But going back to David's question, so splitting it would be probably the direction you'd go if we decided
If it needs to
do
be
the downtown in September.
correct. Yeah, we would either need to bid it separately or bid it with separate work timeframes. So we could bid it as one project, but there'll still be two mobilizations. So they'd mobilize in for the overlay projects and then have to remobilize in for the downtown.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further questions? So a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move first reading of ordinance 4912.
Second. Motion and second for first reading of ordinance 4912.
Now, is this right? I asked for, I'm trying to do it in the right order.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Madam Mayor, I make a motion to amend the first reading of 4912 and I propose this fee structuring. I believe that a square footage proposal would be in the best interest of the city and the streeteries with an 80 cents per square foot on the structure itself, still maintaining the $25 per parking space with the excise tax on that. With a yearly application fee of $150 per structure.
Okay. So the proposed amendment would structure the fees at 80 cents per square foot for the structure footprint plus $25 for each parking stall, plus the excise fee, plus $150 annual fee. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is there discussion on the proposal?
There hasn't been a second. ma'am.
Oh, there was no second.
I'll
Is there
second.
a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. So motion and second for that amendment. Is there discussion?
What's the square footage per stall?
How big is the stall?
189 square feet, I believe is the average.
But just to be clear, as I heard the amendment, it is for the square footage of the streeter itself, not the stalls being used.
Right. And is that per month?
Yes.
Okay. So did you happen to calculate what?
As a matter of fact, I did. So we will just take the Mules Streetery in effect because I have firsthand knowledge of that particular one. At the 80 cents per square footage, I work with about 280 square feet in my actual structure. So that would come out to about, if I had so about 224 dollars. And then I did this on the 3 parking stalls. I'm not sure if I would qualify as 2, but so I calculated everything on the 3 spaces, which would be $75. The excise tax would be $9.63. So the monthly fee would be $308.63 for the structure as it sits now. So that would be a yearly fee of $3,703.56.
Say it again, 3,000.
$703.56.
I have a comment also, but go ahead.
So I still struggle sort of conceptually. I mean, the point of downtown is, generally for commerce with some residential spaces. And so from a council's perspective, I believe it is our job to help people be successful in their businesses. The problem with this whole concept is that it potentially negatively affects all of the other businesses around them to some extent, and potentially the use of downtown for non-business purposes. And so I'm sort of torn conceptually. The figure sounds more reasonable to me. We're not supposed to be putting up barriers to people making a living, and understand that the more commerce that occurs in the downtown area, the better off we are as taxpayers, assuming it's the right kind of commerce and does positive things. It doesn't have costs associated with it that outstrip the tax revenue. So I get it. I'll support this amendment. But I'm still just conceptually, we're renting public space to private businesses, and there's going to be an inequity in how we distribute these spaces.
Monica?
Just even though my thought is that even though the square footage might be less than the parking stalls are still being taken out of use. So it feels that it's fair enough to charge per parking, to not charge for the square footage of the streetery.
No matter how big it is. So charge for
Because
the
it's-
square
yes,
footage
because
of
of-
the parking
Well,
or.
I
per
mean,
parking
I'm
stall.
fine with this fee structure here I would be in favor of the of the 750 column, which I think would kind of end up where you were at, but not necessarily apply to other streeteries. It just doesn't feel like the square footage per streetery is the right way to go.
Okay,
I would be in favor more of the higher dollar amount, honestly, to put this aside for building out some sort of a structure for later use of parking. If we're gonna be removing 26 parking stalls, well, I don't know if it's actually 26 with the way that they're parking for the Unity Park, as well as taking out potentially 24 upwards of is what we could have potentially. We're allowing 4 stalls per block for all of downtown. So if the TAB did it, the 3 that we currently have, another person bought in.
I think it's only on the one-way streets though.
Okay, so
so
you have
2
1,
blocks of
2,
Pearl
3,
and 2 blocks
4,
of
5, 6 blocks downtown. At 4,
4 blocks.
you have Pine Street too,
Pearl and Pine
right?
are one
Both
way.
sides.
Well, but there's only four, right, I'll let the
Sure,
city
yes.
manager.
So it's one-way streets only, and it's 4 per block, including both sides of the block.
Right, so 6 would be, so Pine would get 2, Pearl would get 2, and Fourth would get 2.
Oh, correct.
So potentially 6
Fourth one, yeah.
times 4 each. So we're potentially taking those out of production. So if we're charging a higher dollar amount and we put that dollar amount aside to build a parking structure later, when we have the actual funds built into that system, we solve the problem of the downtown parking at the same time of allowing the streeteries to happen.
Okay, could the city manager comment on the parking study that this, I mean, that the staff and committee is working on?
Sure. And so what we're trying to do is implement some of the strategies in the parking and a couple of numbers that might be relevant to the conversation. And I know earlier, one of the estimations was it costs $1,800 per year. I can probably, looking at the valuations that some other cities did, looking to make some assessments for the value of parking, that number is probably significantly higher. And the cost of building a parking structure is the $30,000 to $40,000 per spot at this point. And so, so we are looking for options to maximize parking, looking for the options of putting together shared parking agreements, working with residences and businesses that might need parking for their employees. And so our goals are to really maximize everything that we have. And then move forward, looking at some electronic systems for parking locators and things like that, too. So we have a team that's working on maximizing our parking. It's a long range project, and we'll hopefully be making some investments in that too.
Okay. Yeah, and my hesitation, Adam, is parking structure just seems outside the realm of I think it would take a lot of years of leasing streeteries before we could get to a funding, to create a funding source for that. It's just $30,000 to $40,000 per parking space in a structure is a lot. For so
I
Do you have
just, and I get both sides of the argument and I don't disagree really on sort of in principle. I think that what EDA has basically said is that if we go with the fee structure that's proposed, we won't have to worry really because there won't be any streeteries most likely. That's basically what they're saying. Few to know. And I recognize that that is not necessarily a good thing. And so I think the balance is really what I think needs to be found. And I think the $25 per parking space as a starting point, I'm not sure really what that is all about anyway, since that doesn't represent any value, right? It's just like, okay, it's 4 spaces, it's 25, and then we'll figure out what we're going to charge. But I think the fundamentally, whether it's the structure footprint or the number of spaces consumed, I think it has to be based on the square footage measurement. To be fair. And the amendments, I think, are sort of heading in the right direction. It seems to be a reasonable number. I couldn't say for sure, but it seems a lot more reasonable than what we've got in the ordinance right now. So that's.
Does anyone want to propose any amendments to the amendment? Or you want to vote that up or down? So, okay. So all in favor of the proposed amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
No. No. The ayes have it, that motion carries. Did you have a proposed amendment on the timing? Sarah?
Oh, I was just with the late fall or early fall, I mean, after rodeo is that what we're talking about, the timing of the slurry or the
Is
timing?
that in, That's not in the ordinance. so-
Actually, it is in the ordinance.
It is,
To
okay.
follow the slurry. Right now, it's calling for removal after the slurry, which is scheduled for, I said, early summer.
So I think that you're gonna propose an amendment.
So so we do have to amend the ordinance if we want to propose September instead of early summer.
Yeah, and give me a second, I'll find the section, I'm sorry.
While we're looking for that, Madam Mayor, I guess this is the part that I really struggle with. Now we're bending construction schedules for something that was very clearly communicated to the people who put the streeteries in. This was a condition of installation that they move when we have a road project. And I get it that it's inconvenient.
Rich, yeah.
A big red car.
Came and moved my microphone. Do I have to say everything else
Lean in.
again? Oh, okay. Anyway, this part would cause me to vote against the streetery. I don't believe we should be adding additional construction costs in a public works process when it was very clearly communicated to the owners of the streeteries that this was a condition.
So just for the record, that is in section 4.414A.030. And it's in sub D9, which in your packet is on page 71. Toward the bottom of the page there.
And so I would remove that part of the amendment. I did not realize that it was in conjunction with another city construction project that would cost the city extra revenue or dollars for that. So because it was, as Rich stated, it was very clearly put to us that if there was city streets maintenance, we would need to abide by that. So I'll remove that part of the amendment.
Okay. I guess I would invite some final comment from the public if anyone.
Blake Collins, 402 North Pearl. In an attempt to not have that 10 or 15% public works deficit between the two, is there potentially another road that would benefit from a chip sealing that we could bundle that in with? So as opposed to it has to be Pearl Street with the university element, is there a possibility that the university element with another road that needs to be? So that way it's a different bundle as opposed to the
Yeah.
previously established bundle?
That's probably not something that we can like just deal with tonight. There is, potential to explore it between first and second reading, but so I'm gonna call for a vote on on the ordinance as amended.
Can you repeat the terms of the amendment with the ordinance?
Okay.
Please.
So it would be the ordinance revising the fee schedule to be 80 cents per square foot for the per month for the structure, $25 for the parking space per month, the excise fee, and $150 annual fee.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
So if we want Public Works to revisit and look at possibilities for a different scheduling of that, does that need to be a part of the motion?
For the ordinance.
Not for the ordinance. But, yeah. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I too will vote aye. Opposed?
I oppose.
That motion carries.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Ellensburg, Washington relating to right-of-way uses other than transportation, adding a new chapter entitled 4.14A, Streeteries, Parklets, and Sidewalk Cafes to Title IV and recodifying and amending Section 4.14.170 Sidewalk Use Permit as Section 4.14A .070 Sidewalk Cafe Permits of the Ellensburg City Code.
Thank you. So next and Reed Park folks, right after this, you're up. So, and I think this won't take too long, not as long as the last one. So this is a resolution adopting the Kittitas County Economic Development Strategic Plan.
Good evening, Council. Heidi Barron Cernaway, your city manager. You have before you a resolution 2023-07 adopting the Kittitas County, and I would add City of Ellensburg Economic Development Strategic Plan. This has been over a 1.5 year long project that started with a recognition from council in 2021 that our conditions have changed in our community. As the pandemic happened, growth happened throughout the county and also in the city. Our conditions changed and we wanted to evaluate where we were and how we could continue to grow our vibrant economy into the future. And so also this was developed through a partnership with Kittitas County in an effort to work together, to work regionally, and to be a really great partner because we know that one, economic development is everyone's business, and two, we don't live in a vacuum or on an island, and it's incredibly important that we work together. So I'm going to go through just a brief overview of the plan and what's in it. And this is actually a summary of what was presented at the joint city county meeting on February 9th. And also to recognize this plan has been put together with a significant amount of community involvement and council involvement. And we'll cover a little bit of that as we move forward. So just to be expedient here. Not sure. There we go. Okay, and I'm using the slides from our consultant, the TIP TIP strategies. And remembering that what we wanted out of this wasn't just a plan to sit on the shelf. We wanted actionable goals that we could work together on to make a difference in our community, to make intentional investments and decisions to move our communities forward. The contractor actually used kind of a 3-step process looking at discovery. What are the assets? What are the opportunities in our communities with a SWOT analysis? And then looking for again, moving to the opportunities and an implementation plan. So it's been a tremendous amount of work to get to where we are today. But this is really where it all begins. So their first step was to look at the data and to talk to people about what they find. What are the assets we have in our community? What do the numbers tell us? And that information was really used to advise and build the recommendations as we move forward. As I mentioned, there's a tremendous amount of community and stakeholder engagement. There's a steering committee that consisted of the Conference of Governments members and additional business folks. And those folks stayed with the process to advise and give feedback throughout the process. Last year, there was an opportunity workshop that was held before the community. And we actually spent, Commissioner Wright and myself and former Mayor Bruce Tabb spent several days working with the consultants, meeting with businesses and folks in our community from Cle Elum to Roslyn, touring around the community to Kittitas and out to Vantage and in Ellensburg as well. Really looking for the opportunities and trying to listen to people to make sure this was an informed plan. One of the things we like to look at, and the consultant actually put this together for us, is what is the future state and the ecosystem. And as I mentioned, I think it's a really important concept that every one of us, our job is to do economic development, but it's in different ways. And so we try to think holistically about what government can do, what businesses can do, what our education workforce can do, and what our nonprofits do to really make our community whole. And looking at, we have a number of organizations who do economic development, but what we recognize is we need to do a better job working together and really keep into roles and to maximize what we have in this community. So part of the key takeaways, I think, about a plan and the plan itself is, I think the key theme was collaboration is essential to implementation. We've got people in this community that are really talented and they do really great things. And back to, we need to work together to do those. And that's where we hope that this plan will, and the action steps we'll be taking will help us move forward together in a thoughtful and strategic way. And the actions really are seen as new opportunities for enhancement and expansion. These are not earth-shaking ideas that we should go build a zoo or we should go, do something that's not part of it. It's building off of our assets. And actions are really about taking incremental steps where we have resources and where the opportunity arises. And this is a plan that is evergreen. It's meant to be dynamic and evolving, and where our jobs are to work on this. And so really, the plan is about creating a framework. There are 5 main goals, and the reason collaboration is number 1 is because we continue to bring that home. We have to work better together. And so there are 5 main goals that really create the framework of this plan. And under those 5 goals, there are specific actions for a number of partners for us to take. So the collaboration, the economic resilience, balanced growth in our community, making really smart investments in our community, and preserving the character while we manage the growth as well. So the plan is set up and it's in your packets today, and it goes through each goal and it sets out a hierarchy of actions underneath. And I'm not going to go through these because I know we have a full house tonight. So and then what our job is to do is the county is looking at adopting this, the plan. We're asking the city to adopt this plan, and we'll be taking this to other jurisdictions and looking to ask them to sign on to either a memo of understanding or to adopt the plan themselves. We think this is a really important starting place for working together in a very different way. Like to recognize that we'd like to do a community launch of the actions for this plan. And that's actually happening tomorrow night. The public is invited. That's happening at Hotel Windrow. The chamber is sponsoring an event. We're actually going to start with a state of our communities. And so we have our chair of the county commission, and we have our own Mayor Lilquist, Kittitas Mayor Hink, and Jay McGowan, the mayor of Cle Elum. We couldn't get Rosalind and South Cle Elum this time, but we're hoping this will be an annual event. And after that, we're going to listen to businesses talk about those 5 goals to tell us how important those are for our growth and our future. In addition, we are working on hosting. We had 2 implementation workshops with folks in our community who do economic development, starting to lay the groundwork for continued work together and continue sort of role definition and to look at the plan and start taking those actions. So we're going to continue that work, and our consultant from TIP Strategies is going to stay with us for that. We also, in our city budget this year, we've hired an arts and economic development manager, and we're in the process of hiring that person, I should say. And that person is going to help us move our part of this plan forward as we move forward. The Conference of Governments is looking at exploring a regional planning model, thinking about how at an elected level, they can work better together, and maybe expanding the table for bringing other jurisdictions or other taxing jurisdictions to the table for a better regional coordination and cooperation. And then this plan will also be used to update the city's economic development chapter of the comp plan, which has been referred for the last couple of years. So that's really a quick overview of what's in the plan. And as I said, this is really a plan, and the real work now gets to begin. So our recommendation from staff and from the consultant is that council would approve resolution 2023-07 and adopt the plan.
Council, do you have any questions for the city manager? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on the economic development plan? And I see no one online.
Madam Mayor, move resolution 2023-07.
Second.
Motion and second for resolution 2023-07, the Kittitas County City of Ellensburg Economic Development Strategic Plan. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, opposed. That motion carries. Thank you. So we are at Reed Park Master Plan Adoption. Page 130 in your packets.
Good evening again, Council. Heidi Baron Cernaway, your city manager. I have the pleasure of presenting this plan tonight. Our Parks Director, Brad Case, is out of town and had poor internet connection, so I'm the pinch hitter. Brad actually put together a presentation, and I'm going to try to follow his presentation. And I've been on working alongside him during this process, and so I think I can answer any questions that come up through this. So, and appreciate everyone's patience tonight. So as folks know that this is the Reed Park Master Plan. How we got here was several years of work and lots of conversations. And we'll revisit a little of the history as we go forward. So we started out in this process with a park planning goal. So early on in the planning process, we developed the goal that would serve as our true North Star as we work toward developing the park plan. And I'm not going to read that to everybody here. The unique nature and the rich history of Reed Park created a complex set of challenges in the development of the master plan, bordered by homes on the south end, the rodeo grounds hillside on the north, and the width of the park at its narrowest point is only a little over 70 feet wide. Being able to retain the passive open space feel of the park was important, while at the same time creating a defined pockets within the park for people to sit and visit, read a book, or simply take in the park's peaceful surroundings. Creating a new park plan for an existing park in some ways is much more difficult than designing a park on a blank canvas. Reed Park was dedicated to the city in 1933. There are 90 years of history, 90 years of memories, generations of use. As we all know, 2023 marks the 100th year of the 100th anniversary of the Ellensburg Rodeo. Part of that age-old tradition is for those in attendance inside the rodeo to turn and wave to those camped and watching from Freeloader Hill. Throughout the planning process, we were mindful of the importance to preserve this tradition. The American Legion has been operating out of the Vista House since 1930. The plan for the plan, which was an online survey in November 2021, had 252 respondents. And there are a number of questions asked to the community, and we had people inside the community self-reported and people outside the community who participated in this survey. The questions were basic. When do you use the park? What types, what do you like most about the park? How do you access the park? Why or how do you use Reed Park? How often? And what do you like about, and the responses were, the majority of people, about 83%, mentioned the views. We all know that this is the most beautiful place to bring people when you have folks visiting, and the views are an asset to that park. Any reason to choose not to use the park? And out of the 170 responses, speed, traffic and pedestrian safety were ranked high, and then lack of park amenities and groups hanging out, and some of those negative behaviors we had talked about previously we're seeing. So how or why do you use Reed Park? And some of the answers were that people exercise, enjoying the views, sitting quiet and peaceful, and it's a place to eat lunch and recreate. So this was, how often do you use Reed Park? And then the first was daily, the yellow is weekly, the purple is monthly, and these are less. And so we have lots of daily, weekly, and monthly frequent users of the park. How do you access Reed Park? And the first one was by auto. It's 147 responses, and the second by bike, and the third by foot. So in the summer of 2022, RWD convened a stakeholder group representing the American Legion, the Kittitas County Field and Stream Club, Ellensburg High School, Kittitas Valley Event Center staff, Reed Park neighbors, immediately adjacent to and on streets that were heavily used by park users on Maple and Poplar, and residents who have generational park use. The stakeholders met 2 times, helped develop 2 plans, which were intended to go in front of the public, but ultimately it was decided that it was best to bring 4 different plans back to the community. So the first community open house was held on November 16th last year, held a successful community open house with over 50 attendees presenting 4 different plans that reflected a range of changes to the park, from minimal changes to the park to very significant changes. And those were options A through D. Community members had the opportunity to review the plans, to speak directly with staff and commission members about the plans, to write down their comments about the park plans, and ultimately vote on their favorite plan. The 2 plans which received the most support were options A and D, which coincidentally reflected the least proposed changes to the park, option A, and the most proposed changes to the park, option D. This is option A. And this is option D. Okay, and we'll go through these slide by slide in detail. On the December 14th, 2023 meeting, a second community workshop was held to provide feedback on the 2 final plans, and the community supported option D over option A, and the vote was 20-14. So we're going to take the park proposal, option D, section by section, and we'll go through some of those enhancements to the park. So we're going to start at the southwest corner of the park. So some things you'll notice in here is that there's attention to separating the pedestrian traffic from the on-street traffic. And so there's an expanded sidewalks at the southern entrance of the park, an expanded sidewalk to the park, and then a crosswalk at the park exit. And I'm hovering over these, and then a 10-foot wide pedestrian paved pathway that's going to run through the park. And in the images, there are trees that will be removed with these new trees. You'll see our newly planted trees. There are also some amenities you're going to see along the way for people to stop and rest and recreate. And so things proposed like a single seat bench on a pad in that area. The next section of the park actually offers some additional parking. And we'll go deeper into this. So off-street pull-in parking, it eliminates the parallel parking in front of the American Legion. The flush, there would be a flush restroom facility on the pad, and also defined seating in picnic areas. You'll see down in the grassy areas, and then the pathway connecting from Alder Street up to the top of the park. The next section as we move forward. And this is really the view from the proposed overlook. This is an at-grade view. And it would remove some of the trees and also replace the trees and continue that pathway, pedestrian pathway through, and to create some additional safety pathways right in front of the hill as well. So improves pedestrian safety. All right, and then we're going to look for the upper edge. So this is the at-grade view. There was a rendering made of, people were concerned about having trees along the hill. And so this is sort of creating a park within a park at the upper end of the park. And so the trees actually from different angles actually can frame the view of the park and create some shade in the area as well. So it's creating a safe pedestrian crossing from the pathway that runs through the park to the upper grassy area. And then I'll talk about parking and I'll bring this back a little bit after we go to the end here. So the blended turf area, and the idea at the top is to actually take the wall down and blend the top area and make an ADA accessible path and a spot to sit up toward the park. And so as you move along this path, we know that the views, you have more and more of a panoramic view as you reach the end. And so really trying to maximize the pedestrian access to that. And then creating spaces for people to gather and rest. And so benches and wall seating at the overlook. And we talked about the continuation of the pedestrian path. And what this does is, I'm going to back up a few slides. This actually reduces. So right now, if you're coming up Maple Street and you're heading up Craigs Avenue, the current traffic pathway will take you up to the end here and then turn around. So this actually creates an early loop. So the upper part is pedestrian only. There's the two-way traffic to these upper, it's local only, and for emergency vehicles only. There's a hammerhead turnaround, so emergency vehicles can turn around, and local access to all the residents there as well. So the idea is to actually create the flow of traffic and separate that from the pedestrian traffic through the park and also at the end of the park. The total trees removed for this project, because when you build things, trees do need to get removed, were 23, and the proposed plan is to replant 23 trees. Up at the upper edge of the parking, there were 19 parking spots, if you count every single little spot that you can squish a car into. And this plan creates, I believe it's 22 parking spots between the split parking below the American Legion and up above the American Legion. And there would also be ADA accessible parking at the top. So I'm going to stop the share. And we can come back to that if we need. So the plan was presented to the Parks and Recreation Commission at their meeting in February. And the Parks and Recreation gave a favorable recommendation for council to consider adoption of the master plan. Option D for Reed Park. And we did have the consultant look at the cost for that proposed plan, and separating the cost out, that's actually included in your packet tonight. The total cost, including the street improvements, we know that road needs some additional work, is just over 2.6 million. In the city budget this last year, council did adopt REIT 2 tax, the real estate excise tax, the 0.25%, to reserve that for building parks at the max. That will likely bring in around $400,000 per year. And so we would look for opportunities to phase this project moving forward. We know that it's been clear that council doesn't want this to sit on a shelf, to find a way to move forward to fund a project even in phases. So with that, again, staff's recommendation would be for council to consider adoption of the master plan.
Council, is there questions for the city manager?
I don't have a question. I did have a comment. If I can wait, if you'd rather.
Yeah, let's wait.
Really was a question to whether there's a process to modify the preferred option if there are specific things that we would like to adjust. I can wait on an answer.
Let's hear from the audience. If there's, if you need to come to the microphone to be heard, and if you have any questions, they need to be directed through the council. And please begin with your name and address.
I'm Jeff Whitman. I live at 2104 North Park Lane Avenue here in Ellensburg. You just made a comment that there were 19 parking stalls at the top end. They're not on your plan.
So through the council, the questions
I'm sorry.
to us.
The parking stalls are not on this plan. They're not on this plan.
Okay, we'll get to
Okay.
that. Thank you.
Okay, do we start making the comments now that we want to make on
your
Reed Park?
comments.
Okay. I've been a member of the American Legion post up there for about 26 years. I was commander there for 14 and a half years. I know all the problems that have been at that park. I've been in the middle of most of them. We have a membership up there of around 500 total between the Legion members, the Sons of the American Legion, and the Women's Auxiliary. We do dinners up there where we'll have anywhere from 30 to 100 people. We do memorials up there where we have sometimes well over 100 people. How are we supposed to function and do that if you take all of our parking away? We're a business up there. We're not just an American Legion club. We have to exist. If you take 2/3 of the parking off the hill, how do we exist? How do we stay there? It's a veterans club. Okay. We should be getting support, not having this type of proposal done. The way this is drawn out, it's for the few that live at the end of the hill. It's not for the American Legion Club. And I don't think I'm the only one that feels this way, and I'm not opposed to change. I just think the way this is put together is bad. Part of the parking you're putting is halfway down to the stop sign down there. A lot of our people are older and don't want to walk from down that far just to get to the building. So how many people, excuse me, on the city council have actually been up in Reed Park and taken a look at what is proposed? How many of you? 3?
I'm counting like
I
way more than 3.
see something wrong with that for what's going on here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
For clarification, how many parking spaces are lost and how many parking spaces are added in this plan?
So there are 19 parking spots that are currently at the top of the loop. And there are 22 parking spots in this proposed plan. Some of those are moved down below the American Legion, and there's a number of spots that are above.
So American Legion has its own
Has its own
parking
parking that's
on
not touched.
the rodeo ground side. That's not touched. This plan adds, I'm not sure how many
I believe it's a net 3.
parking across the street from the American Legion down below. And it adds a number of parking spaces just north. Those are kind of existing. They just aren't striped currently. And currently they're being used as parallel parking,
That's correct.
but now they're angled in. So there is a net gain of parking spots in this park plan, correct?
That's my understanding. So.
So if we need anyone speaking to be at the microphone, please.
Hi, my name is Patrick Debney. I'm a lifetime resident of Ellensburg, Washington. I first started going to Reed Park in 1962 when Hal Holmes took me by the hand and walked me around the park. I live at 1001 South Chestnut, apartment 626. You don't include the parking spaces that are not marked out on the plan. There are parking areas along the street that you don't include. You don't include the number of parking areas that the American Legion have, which is limited. What I say is just basically put a restroom up there and leave it alone. Reed Park is a crown jewel of the Ellensburg City Parks. It is, you take away the upper side of that, you're not going to have as good a view of the valley as you would currently. I'm going to leave it at that. If anything pops up, I'm going to hold you to it. So.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, Mr. Okay. So one moment, I've recognized this gentleman over here. You can be next.
Bob Kibler, 708 East Sixth Avenue. And I just want to show that there's a good place and a bad place from which to view the panorama to the west. I walk Craig's Hill every morning and took some pictures on February 17, about 9:30 in the morning. And this is a common scene. You've got cars, there are 5 of them here. They're parked in those upper diagonal parking spaces where the best view is. And they know that's where the best view is. From there, you have a panorama. I'm going to take a minute to show you how to do a panorama. You got your little camera.
So, Mr. Can you move to the microphone, please? I'm sorry. This is being recorded and they can't hear you if you're not.
Click, 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 they overlap, click, put them in your photo software and you get one picture seamless out of it. So here is the panorama from the good parking place. Can I show the people behind me?
Certainly, but you have 3 minutes and you're at 1:30.
Down at the proposed parking space, there's 7 spaces near the Vista House. We also have a view. It's a panorama, but it's limited. It's quite limited. And you've got about 120 degrees in this panorama because of the big, building on the left. A big building on the left. And so here's 180 degrees, 90 degrees. I know what about 120 degrees is, and that's what you have to peek around the corner of the Vista House. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Marilyn Ross. I live at 303 South Anderson. My husband was in the military, my dad, my brother, and 3 uncles. So the American Legion means a lot to me. We have lots of people up there that are elderly. In fact, most of us are. We cannot walk a long distance. And we also hold meetings because we're central to the state. People come from the west side all over to come to meetings here. They spend the night in our hotels, eat at our restaurants. So you take away our parking, that takes away those people, we won't have those meetings. And that is tourism for our valley. Thank you.
Thank you. And sir, yeah. You're next.
Name is Joe Hill, 711 East 7th Ellensburg. I'm a Vietnam combat medic veteran. Been a member of the Post 8 Ellensburg 31 years. I'm presently the commander at the post. As they have said, our post gets used by state members and we do all kinds of other functions up there. We use all the available parking that we have at present. And if you take these parking spots away, you will eventually kill the post. We don't want that. We are the only post in Kittitas County that has a lounge and is large enough to hold the meetings that we and other functions that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir. Oh, sir. Okay.
Wrote notes. I apologize. Public speaking isn't really my strong suit. My name is Sarah Gann. I live at 607 North Sprague. I'm a community member, park goer, runner, cyclist, but I'm also a motorist. And I would just like to, I guess, just put this out there. What is a successful park? It's not just the beauty of it, the design, in part, yes, But I posit that really the true success of the park is its usage. That's really how it's measured. And, you know, I took statistics, couple of different classes there in college. And I take issue with the sample base for the poll that we're using in this meeting. You know, the council agenda report opines that the park's historical uses come in the form of walking, jogging, and biking. Now, I do all of those things. I do also drive. Based on community feedback, those were the primary Reed Park uses, non-motorized recreational walking. That may be true of the neighborhood usage, the folks who live there. However, it feels like this is a $2 million project where we're basically building a really nice front lawn and private park for just that community. Thank you. Furthermore, I mean, so where the poll came from, if I go to the Westminster Dog Show and I ask who likes cats or dogs more, really, what are they going to say at the Westminster Dog Show? They're going to say dogs, right? I don't feel like the rest of the community members were polled appropriately, and I get it. Had you guys asked the high school, what do you think their answer would have been, right? If someone was posted at that park and they were measuring how that park was used, it would have been vehicles. I use my vehicle to get up there. A lot of outside community members use their vehicle to get up there. Taking away the upper part of that park and the parking without incorporating that with the new greenery for that neighborhood, it really does take away how that park is actually used. I mean, this is like a bygone era that it's reminiscent of American Graffiti 1950s. We all go up there and park. We watch sunsets, we watch and listen to community events happening down in the rodeo fairgrounds. Taking that away it's really taking away a huge part of the soul of that park. Additionally, I do want to bring up the homeless situation. Working with the rodeo, I don't know if any of you folks understand how big a problem we have. If we were to go to the stalls right now, or John Wayne Trail this time of night, or Hilltop,
That's
there's
3
homeless
minutes.
folks posted there. And I feel like just one more second. I have one more thing to state. I do feel like what we're doing there by limiting the traffic, we're inviting folks to feel comfortable to come and camp up there. They're going to move right across John Wayne Trail. We're basically building them a camp and toilet.
Okay, thank
And
you.
that's it.
So 3 minutes and yeah, we got the timer up.
Hi, my name is Albert McCray, 805 South Whitman Street. I'm one of the newest members for Lifetime up at the Legion. I'm a veteran. I'm probably the youngest veteran probably see around here, but I spent a year and a half in the Persian Gulf. Moving to Ellensburg, looking at Craig Hill, what she was getting at, talked to Sarah, to preserve the character of Craig Hill, as you said, on other items. The challenges I have, my father was a developer, and I see that the dog leg that you guys did for the fire truck is just a worse example you could possibly do. If I was a developer and I put that at the end of a development, you guys would not let that push through. Yet you're putting a scab on something or just a fix on something that's really not well. If you have $2.6 million, why don't you buy for eminent domain, the neighbors, the 3 houses up at the top, and expand that park? Take the park that you already have and make it bigger. The people that have those areas right now that complain, that want the people out there, why don't we relocate them, take their place and make more space for parking and all these problems that you guys are talking about? There's a couple other scenarios. When you guys have a lot of elderly people that come up there, and there's 2 floors to the Legion, if you guys ever been up there, that they rent the space for weddings and venues and all kinds of stuff. Most of these people, their life is there. And I visit with a lot of these folks, and they have a lot of stories to tell. I encourage you guys to get to know some of them. They're lifetime members of this community. They've paid taxes here for years and years. You guys pretty much should listen. These are years and years and generations of people that have been here. And, you know, some of you guys are new members that are maybe some of you may be new members to Ellensburg. You probably should get to know these guys more. There's years and years of giving their life and soul to America. as veterans. I think that elderly people, if you take away the upside, you're going to take away the value of using that hall upstairs. And that is already, we're limited on how much space. It's getting more popular with younger people coming up there now because it's a beautiful space. And a lot of these guys have worked hard and donated time for those areas to keep it good. And we're trying to use the upstairs for more community things that you guys support. And if you do take away the park spacing up above, you're taking away the lifeblood of that park. You really are. And you're gonna invite all kinds of homeless and different things and actually change that park. And it's not a good feeling long-term. I respect every one of you guys. You guys have a hard task. Please consider years and years of generations that have put their life and soul into that place. And that park was donated to share that space and to share that parking upside with the Legion. And the Legion's been there before that park was actually put together as a park. So you guys pretty much think hard before you make that decision of going Plan D. Plan A has a better scenario. If you want to add a bathroom to help some of these people, great, for people walking.
Time.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Ma'am, yes, you, and then you can get up and wait if you'd like. Okay.
My name is Louise Demetrescu. I live at 1101 East Tanham Road in Ellensburg. I just wanted to mention or allude to the fact that you talk about the 90 years of history of Reed Park, and yet it seems that Plan D or Option D is going to change the future use of Reed Park drastically and sort of negate the community history that has built up in that park. With the changes that you're making, you're going to have 7 parking spaces that have a view, whether it's limited or it won't be as good as it is now with the 19 spaces. You'll have 7 spaces that have any view at all. It seems to me, if I understand this correctly, all of the other spaces will be facing in the opposite direction. So they'll have no opportunity for a view. You're going to remove 23 mature trees and replant 23 new trees, but I wonder how big they will be. And I sincerely doubt that they will be as big as the rendering showed them, at least for another 20 years. And finally, I would say the park is able to be used now year round by people, not only bikers and runners, but particularly people in cars who can come up there and look at the view and watch the weather and eat lunch or whatever they want to do 12 months a year. But the way the park would be reconfigured, it's going to be picnic spaces and benches, which I am certain will not be used from October to May. So that I think is a real minus in the change. And finally, I would say you had a vote, you alluded to the vote, which was 14 votes for option A and 20 votes for option D, which is not a huge, certainly it's not a huge group of people to be voting. And it's also not a huge disparity between the votes. So I think to choose option D is kind of a radical decision, and I hope you won't make it.
I'm Keith Weiland, United States Marine Corps, 3230 Racer Creek. I noticed you guys all raised your hand when you said you visited the club up there. Rich Elliott, David Miller, and Adam, and I don't know the city attorney's name. Are you veterans?
Yes. Yes.
How come you're not a member up there? Are you guys members?
No.
How come you're not a member? And are you a veteran?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you should guys become members. And if you're not a veteran, you can become a Sons of the American Legion. I'm the adjutant for the Sons. You women, you can be members up there to be members of the auxiliary. You guys should come up and join. You should do that. You know that. Okay. I can get you memberships. I make out the cards.
Sir, if you could direct your comments to the plan and
This is the plan for you guys to become
The
members, to know
pla-
what it's like to
the
be up there.
part
This is part
plan.
of the plan for you people to be more knowledgeable on what's going on up there. I only got a minute and a half to go. I've been watching. I've been eyeballing here.
We need to stick to what's on the agenda.
This is
And
the
membership
agenda.
in the VFW
This
is
is
not on
the
the
agenda.
agenda.
It's the soldier and the veteran, not the minister, who has given us freedom of religion. It's not the soldier. It is the soldier and the veteran, not the reporter.
Please relate
who
your
has given
remarks
us
to the
freedom
part.
of the press. This is part of the agenda as far as I'm concerned. Please be quiet. I would not interrupt you.
Sir,
Yes,
you are out of order.
well, I could say the same thing. But anyway, if you
This
don't
is
like
the
this
city
up here,
council meeting, and you need-
I can peel out. I can go.
you need to
But
sit down.
I recommend that you listen to these
Please
folks
sit
that have
down.
said this, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak, sir?
Name's David Beach, live at 600 South Pearl. Recently lost a brother-in-law and a mother and father-in-law. And we had, when mom passed, probably 400 people up there. If you do what you're gonna do to the park, it's gonna ruin it for any, all the veterans that we use the park too for them, for the 21 gun salute, all that. I think we could spend $6 million a better way. Let's put this up for vote again to the people. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tim Paxton. I live at 206 East Idaho. Just moved here about 2 years ago. Been a part of the Legion for about the same amount of time. We had an event the other day and we took a bunch of pictures of that event, and I want to share those pictures with you. That's all the comments I want to bring. So if I can I just bring this to you guys so you can see the pictures and how we parked everything? That way it might shed some light on what we're talking about, okay?
If you, yeah.
Plus, my wife put a lot of time on this and I just want to go home. Tell you guys what- Thanks.
Thanks. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Mr. Kelleher?
My name is Daryl Sawyer. I'm a veteran and I belong to the Legion for about 12 years now. And Legion has been a place for me to go and enjoy, have fun, visit a lot of people, bring back my old memories, talk about the past, talk about the present. And a lot of the things that I see that's going on up there right now that hasn't been discussed yet is why they want to make these changes. And I know the people up there, I hear them complain all the time about the kids up there throwing their trash out, playing loud music, partying, drinking their beer, raising hell, racing up and down the road. And I can understand why they want change, but why don't they fix that problem instead of trying to change our lives?
Thank you. Mr. Kelleher?
Pat Kelleher, 6530 Wilson Creek Road. I highly encourage the city council to approve the Reed Park Master Plan. Many hours have been invested by the public since 2020 in getting a resolution to address public safety at Reed Park in the surrounding neighborhoods. The Reed Park Master Plan addresses the public safety concerns raised by the public with a simple solution of rerouting the existing traffic. A benefit of the safety solution is that it will unlock a hidden gem in the Ellensburg community. The hidden gem is the impressive viewpoint of the Kittitas Valley from Reed Park. The view has always been available from vehicles, but with the improvement to public safety, By rerouting traffic, the view can now be shared with pedestrians. The rerouting of traffic involves closing the racetrack and having all park traffic take the first left into the park. This allows the upper park area to be developed for pedestrian use, unlocking the hidden gem. The Reed Park Master Plan is estimated to cost $2.6 million to implement. The city budget process to get funding approval could take several years. The proposed improvement to public safety should not be delayed one more day. I would propose the immediate placement of 6 ecology blocks in the painting of the upper parking spaces. In this photo, you put 3 at the north end and 3 at the south end. And there's been a lot of, I called Ellensburg Cement today, and the ecology blocks cost $55 a piece. The council can amend the Reed Park Master Plan motion tonight to provide early implementation to this needed improvement for public safety. I've heard what the Legion has had to say. Let's try it. Let's improve the public safety up there. Let's spend the $300 on ecology blocks and see what happens. Yes, I think some parking needs to be added to the north end for the view. But this started as a public safety concern, and you should take action to address it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tyrell, you were signed up.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you. I don't envy you for the decision you have to make with the things that you've heard tonight. I too have heard from the Legion and other members of the public. I'm actually here in support of the plan. I live at 1200 East Craig, one of the properties that's been offered to be seized for the park. I speak in support of it simply, and I'd like to add my family's lived on the park since I think 43 or 44. One of the current challenges, I believe the growth in Ellensburg, the city's bigger than it's ever been. We've got more traffic in our city than we've ever had. The park is likely used more than it ever has been, but it appeals simply only to the motoring traffic. There's no sidewalks. There's no accommodations for adults with disabilities. The only thing that the park offers is parking simply for the people that want to park there. There's no diversity in its purpose. It absolutely needs a bathroom. I think everybody agrees with that. I'd rather not have people knocking on my door asking to use mine anymore. But as far as the overlook and the goal and what you guys are trying to accomplish, thank you. I believe the park can be repurposed to absolutely accommodate more people in our community than just simply those that want to park. I do value that. I think that's important. I agree. It's absolutely one of the most beautiful views in the valley. It's certainly the high point that overlooks the university, the rodeo grounds, and the city. And I think that that view and that property should be used more than just simply as additional parking for the Legion. But I agree that the Legion's parking is important. It should be used for more than just somebody that wants to sit in a car and let it idle. It should be enjoyed by families and an investment to our community so that those who walked it when they were young can continue to walk it in safe ways currently and in the future. Good luck and thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue? Sir.
My name is Jeff Dimitrescu. I'm related to this person over here who lives at 1101 East Tanum. My preference is for nothing to be done to the park because I like it just the way it is. Now, I know that's not the unanimous view here. But if you look at Plan A and look at Plan D, Plan A seems to be a compromise. Like there's a lot of parking spots that are protected in Plan A, yet other things are done to improve the park. So I would like you all to look at Plan A again and to have someone tell us what's in Plan A versus Plan D. It's a wonderful spot. It really is. I go up there 3 or 4 times a week. I'm retired, so I can do that. And I hope that when you do vote on something, you take into account the American Legion needs, the residents' needs, and also the needs of the vast number of people who go up there, who drive up there. I doubt very much if Plan D is ever going to be used in the winter. No one's going to go up there in the winter. Not the way it's been drawn up. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's past 9. Is there anyone who has non-repetitive information to add to this conversation? And seeing no one online. Council?
I got a couple things because I'm new to council. As everyone knows, I would like to go back and just briefly have someone explain to me why there was a proposed plan to change the park to start with. Because I don't know that.
We're going to be done with public comment and we're going to let staff take that question.
Thank you. It's actually in your staff report, a little bit about the history. So in 2016, council we did an update to the parks plan, and actually the same consultant, landscape architect, worked on conceptualizing that plan. And at the time, the discussion was, do we move forward with a significant update to the plan, changing because we had some complaints about the traffic, pedestrian safety, and some unwanted behaviors that you've heard about tonight. And really the neighborhood said, no, we think we want to address these issues with education and with enforcement. And so over the last several years, we've actually done some samples of sort of traffic slowing options. Our police have done extra enforcements. The park hours have been changed, working with the school district to help educate and also work with the teachers and the students at the school district to try to curb some of those unwanted behaviors, especially during the school day. And again, working on some enforcement to curb those and also to slow some of the traffic through there. And a couple of years ago, the issues continued to proceed, and actually the community members, and not just those adjacent to, but those leading up to the neighborhood with traffic on their streets, requested that we consider some engineering solutions. And so it was started a few years ago in 2016. The plan at the time and the consensus at the time, or the majority at the time, we're saying don't change it much. And what we've done is we've tried over a number of years to try to curb some of those, and also and to improve the experience of folks in the park. But the request was to actually look at the park itself. And the other piece is that this is a gem in our community. And so in addition to, we have problems here, there was, in addition, it was an opportunity and a desire to do something that really worked better for our community. So that's what got us here today. It was actually the neighborhoods and the neighbor and the council's interest in moving forward with trying to improve conditions in the park and really improve that gem. Thank you.
And I would add, some folks from the VFW have been involved in that conversation since the very beginning. American Legion, I'm sorry. So, is there any other questions?
I'll just make a comment, and I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going to know that you can't make everybody happy, but this room is filled with our vets, and that speaks to what's happening here. So, we had some supporters for the plan, but the people that live in this neighborhood are not here. And so, that's important when council thinks about this, I think.
Okay, anyone else?
Can we clarify the parking issue? I understand that it's adding parking, not subtracting parking, but it feels that.
So no one speaks unless they come to the microphone and they're invited by me. Got it? So the city manager will, can you respond to Monica's
I
question?
will do my best to respond to Monica's question. So thank you. So the parking spaces, again, by count to the marked parking spaces, and we are counting the diagonal spaces, the pull-in spaces at the upper part. Our consultant counted 19. We have 22 that have been inserted into the plan. Again, the 7 or 8 up on top, and then the others below the American Legion. And so I think folks in this room are counting. One of the complaints that we get from neighbors is also when the Legion has events, that sometimes people park in places that they don't allow through traffic and for emergency vehicles and such. So what this plan does, it's one of the things we worked on to try to add as many parking spots as we possibly could, but it actually creates more organized parking too. And so they're clearly defined, and it actually creates probably a safer passage for emergency vehicles as well through there. So we did not count all the potential parking spaces that if people are parking the parallel parking along the sides of the road. We did not count those. So,
Okay, and follow-up question. There's an arrangement with a group that's allowed to camp there over rodeo weekend.
That's
So,
correct.
okay,
Yes.
and is that, what is the avenue for that permit, for that space to be used as essentially temporary parking?
So that is part, and that arrangement is part of the agreement with the county, that during rodeo or events that they have at the event center, they can essentially call that we close it down. So the agreement with the Field and Stream folks would continue. This is a grassy area, and there would likely be some impervious surfaces that would allow for continued camping in that area. So that was part of our goal at the beginning, was try to continue the legacies that we have.
So we're just going to do council questions. Thank you. Does anyone?
So we don't have an estimate on the number of unmarked spaces that are being used.
We do not have an estimate
Parallel
because
or
they're
otherwise.
not marked spaces, and they
Right.
they tend to move.
Well, I can
So,
speak from
yeah.
personal experience. I've been to a daytime event up there, public event, and I was ticketed for parking in the parallel spot. So I didn't appreciate that much either, but then I went out and looked at the sign, said no parking, but I guess that was my fault. But I wasn't alone. There wasn't enough parking, and people were backed up all the way up the hill. So it was one of the high school top 10% luncheons, and it's a pretty good gathering, not as big as some of the American Legion events, but yeah, I think just because they're not counted doesn't mean they don't exist. You know what I mean? In that sense. So I think this is something that we should think about a bit in our thinking.
And I would mention that there is up Alder Street, so there's a pathway that's actually created. And so one of the thoughts too is that additional parking could happen on Alder Street, and then there's a clearer path up directly to the Legion.
Is there any other questions for the city manager? So
Can I ask
we're,
a question, right?
if
If
you
it's,
can ask questions of the public if you'd like.
no, I was gonna ask
Okay.
staff.
Yes. go
So
ahead.
I get the plan, the tree replacement, and I get that sometimes when you build paths, trees need to be moved, but I know we don't have an arborist on staff any longer, but have we, is there a sort of a professional opinion about the loss, the net loss, the the value of the existing trees. I was wondering if that was expanded.
You're getting a red card.
Oh, okay, sorry. I just wondered if that was, I know you dealt with the consultant a bit, but was it?
Yes.
And to the point made earlier, I mean, we probably are not going to be replacing these with mature trees. So 10, 20, 30 years, most of us, some of us won't probably be here. Some of us, I'm optimistic, but yeah, I think that's a real point. And those trees also have an environmental value, carbon sequestration and other things. So if they're essential, that's fine, but it seemed like, it looks to me, it feels like a wholesale, just, it's much easier. It's kind of reminds me of a subdivision where it's easier for the developer to go in and take every tree out and make it easier to build. So I'm wondering how much thought was really put into that. And I should
So-
know, but I don't.
Yes, so there was a significant amount of thought put into that. And so our consultant did look at the age of the trees and the type of trees. And the trees that his assessment was that they are near most of them are nearing end of life. And so we're going to need to replace those at some point, and we'll probably start losing some of those very soon too. So we can also, increase the number of trees, but you are absolutely correct. There's value in trees, and it's going to take a while to replace the size and volume of those trees too.
Is there any other questions for staff or the public?
I've got one quick one. The section between the two parking stalls on this map here, that is directly adjacent to the American Legion, are we shortening that drive at all? So there's potentially still that availability of that section for parallel parking?
So we didn't designate parallel parking. And again, I believe,
It's not designated there right now either, but it
yeah,
still happens.
yeah. And, we wanted to not, certainly the American Legion has their own property lines. And so, so I don't believe that it was wide enough to support the additional parallel parking along that narrow strip. And I think we tried to maximize the number of diagonal pull-in spaces as well.
Anyone else with questions? Okay, at the risk of opening this all back up, no repetitive information at the microphone, please.
Albert McCray again. Field and Stream, last year I drove through there when Field and Stream was there. They have a bunch of RVs. If that's all lawn, I don't know how you get all the RVs in that location, what you're talking about, as far as if Plan D goes through. Plan A would be a better suit for all parties. If you did Plan D, you're limiting, you could not put all these RVs on the lawn. Does not work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought Mr. Case said that had been considered and it was feasible.
That is correct. And I wish he was here.
Okay, no repetitive information, please.
Pat Devney again from 1001 South Chestnut. We look at the area around the college, we look at all the way up Third Street, and there are requirements for RPG permits all over town. The college really hasn't got enough parking spaces, as everybody knows. The city of Ellensburg has a parking shortage. So how do we deal with that parking shortage? Is Judge Whitfield Park still in existence? Whitfield Triangle Park?
It is for sale. Would you like a little piece?
What
of
I suggest you do is hang on to it and turn it into a parking lot, for crying out loud.
Thank you.
Beings that you were already short on that, so.
Thanks. Council, do you have any direction?
There's a hand raised down there.
Okay, so if you'd like to come forward, we're here. But we're not going to go past 9:30 with these comments. It's the drive to go home.
My name is Virginia Ronnie. I live at 1101 Ranch House Lane in Ellensburg, Washington. I also am a veteran. My question is, okay, we have these diagonal parking gates down the road from the club. Now, what happens when you get to talk to an old person? They have to walk from there. They have to walk from there up to the club. Did anybody take into consideration any of that at all? You talked about the stairway down the hill. Have you walked it at all? And climbed back up? Do it when you're short of air. And that's another story. Trust me, I do it. But it's hard. But take into consideration us old people too.
Okay. Is there a motion? Then I'm going to suggest Kelleher's pop-up park. Let's try it with an easy putting it back if it doesn't work and see what happens. And do some studies about what happens to traffic, what happens to parking during the American Legion events. And gather some data before we invest our $2 million.
Can I ask?
I have a question on that.
Okay, Nancy.
It's it seems, my understanding of the pop-up things that it would stop the traffic going around. I'm not sure where's he putting?
So
Design would stop.
Mr. Kelleher provided us with an email earlier today and it's on our dais with, so he would be blocking it here and here. I'm not sure if those are the right places. But it would interrupt the traffic flow around the upper circle,
This is the
which
upper
is,
circle.
this is the upper, you would
they have-
maintain the lower circle
They'd have to turn
traffic.
around if they drove up.
We would have to put a sign that would be the one only local traffic at the bottom circle.
How's that gonna help? The
It
parking?
helps us understand the impact of option D on traffic flow and on parking without what it doesn't do is add the 19 spaces down below at the same time. So it's not
So Nancy, until you have a second, I don't think we should be really discussing
okay.
this proposal. So if somebody wants to second it, I'm happy to discuss it.
It was-
I have an alternate.
Okay, well, go for it then.
So is yours dying?
Oh, I'll second for discussion.
Oh,
I just,
Second because.
it was a suggestion that we consider that. Well, hear what Rich has to say.
No, good.
Go ahead.
Well, now that I think about it and we don't have, it's not a real, it's not real because the 19 spaces down below are not going to be there. So it doesn't really provide a,
So I have a suggestion that as much as I hate to make it, we've heard, I think compelling reasons to question whether or not option D is the best option. Could we have a look at option A? Does option A deal with the safety issues? And if it does, and it solves the problems that we were trying to solve in the first place.
Can you put option A on the screen? Yes. So I just want to, parks are not parking. One. This is a public park. Two. That what I'm hearing from folks is you're using a public park as a parking lot.
No.
But all the testimony about we have events there and you're taking away our events and we can't do events. I'm just makes it seem like this is our personal parking lot and you guys are taking it away. And that's what I'm hearing. So this is option A, which leaves that upper. So, and I don't understand why it's easier to walk from that upper loop down to the VFW than to walk from the lower loop up to the American Legion. I'm sorry.
It's not just for the.
Three strikes.
It's not for American Legion, ma'am. It's also to walk up there and see the view. It has nothing to do with just leave.
And okay, so Nancy, the other option is to turn it back to the Parks Commission. I mean, we have a recommendation. We've been through a process. We've been through 2 years of study and discussion. And this option D was the Parks Commission's recommendation. And everybody was invited to participate in that survey. It wasn't just for neighbors. It was the entire public. It was well publicized.
No, not true at all.
So, well, we can, so.
So I guess I'd like to make a suggestion, and my suggestion is that we return this to the Parks Commission. We have a process, and the important part here is, whether you knew it or not, there was a public process that was going on, and so I get it. You feel like your concerns haven't been heard. I struggle a little bit with the parking issue being kind of the center issue around the American Legion, in that the photos that you showed, but almost everybody listed parking as being a consideration here. So the photos that you showed, Hank, let me speak. The photos that you show illegal parking. The photos that you show do not show a 26-foot fire lane. And so what I'm suggesting is we kick it back to the Parks Department to address the parking issues so that the impact on the American Legion can be somewhat mitigated, rather than, we're not going to get anywhere. And I'm not making the motion this time. I'm always the one that makes the controversial motion, so I'm not doing it. So I would like to see this referred back to the Parks Commission, take into account the fact that, there are important community events, that the American Legion is an important part of the community. And we see if there's a way to hybrid the proposal in a way that makes the parking legal.
Yeah.
Because the reason you're getting ticketed is because you're violating the fire lane. And those are your patrons. And I don't think that makes a very good impression on Ellensburg if you're getting parking tickets handed out to you. So that would be my suggestion is let's kick it back and let's figure a way to mitigate the impact to the American Legion.
Okay. Could I add something to that?
Certainly.
I agree with that. And I think I would add one other thing, And that is, and this is one of those examples, I think, where we've spent 3 years looking at this and looking at it from all different angles. And, just when you think you have it figured out, you realize you don't. And I was looking at this alternative D, but it doesn't really matter. It could be alternative A. And one thing and this isn't something that is at the top of anybody's list right now, but what we haven't factored into the planning of this park as a long-term plan is public transit access. There's no transit stop. Now, we don't have a transit route up to Craig's Hill today, but I think it wouldn't be a bad idea if all of the city's parks are accessible someday. So I think, it's not a big deal, but as we're going through with transit now, having to retrofit stops with ramp access, it'd be an easy thing to roll into the design. So I'd like to see that included in the discussion. And because I think transit, as we know, is something that provides access to all members of the community, including those who have accessibility issues. The other thing I'd say is this conversation has been really interesting, and I think it's enlightening too, because I think we've all been up to the park at different times of the year for different events. I live at the bottom of the hill, down Oldham, about 3 blocks below it. And, I walk up the hill and yeah, it's a hike. I can see when the light's on at the American Legion. I know when the bar's open, that's good. But I think that I agree that this is a unique asset in our park inventory. And I think again, best intentions aside, I think we visualize what parks should be, just in this sort of singular sense. And I think the reality is that the value of this park in large part has been said, is it is the best vista in the entire community. And the reality is that the majority of people that enjoy that vista get there by car. And it reminds me a little bit of roads in national parks. I mean, if you want to go into a national park, I know they have set asides for wilderness areas and non-motorized access, but if you don't have a road into the park, you're not going to get to see it. And I think that, I think that kind of speaks for itself, but not to say that it should be a parking lot. I'm not saying that, but I think this hybrid, as Councilmember Elliott suggested, we should keep that in mind. And I think the benefit would be we could come up with some balance here that would not hurt everyone. That's what I'd like to do.
Make a motion, Mr. Elliott.
All right, I'll make
Madam Mayor.
the motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that we send this back to the Parks and Rec Department for further review.
Can I change that to commission?
Yes.
Thanks.
Could I make a friendly amendment, or I'd like it to be more specific,
Yeah.
I think, because it's open-ended, I think, kind of right now.
Well, I think we're missing a broader point, obviously with our room being packed to the brim, to the point where we have them in the hallway as well.
Let's get a second before discussion, or, yeah.
Very well.
Is there a second? So motion fails for lack of second, and you want to fine tune that?
What? The motion?
The motion.
Motion's dead, right? So we need a new motion.
Yeah,
New motion.
yeah.
New motion.
I'll make a motion that we refer the matter back to the Parks and Recreation Committee to mitigate the impacts to the American Legion with any of the proposals.
A second.
Yeah.
So we're not going to speak unless we're at the microphone and I've recognized you. So,
Discussion.
Just-
Yeah, my only point,
but was there a second?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry.
and my only point on the throwing it back to parks, and I agree, that's the place where this discussion should happen to give us some more material to work with. But I really don't want to subject the Parks and Rec Commission to evaluating alternatives A through D again. I think it was narrowed down to A and D. And as we saw earlier, A kind of flips the script a little bit. So I'm not sure that they need to spend time, but maybe if they feel like it, maybe they can come up with a hybrid between all of 4 options.
I think there's room. I'm looking at this, having ideas. The my issue with the motion is, what does mitigate mean? And that to me does not make whole. That does not count all of the illegal parking and replace it. So we do need to include the Legion in the process. Apparently, I had no clue that no one was paying attention because the American Legion was part of the initial discussion. So I don't know how we got to this place, frankly, because we've had a lot of public discussions. And so we can discuss more before we start moving dirt. It's better to get it right. So what did you mean by mitigate?
Mitigate means to minimize the impact.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about that? And I assume that some analysis has been done, back in the conceptual planning stage, but I think, if we've got what are essentially illegal spaces because they're adjacent to fire lanes, I mean, would it be possible to provide that information to the Parks and Rec Commission so they wouldn't have to guess? I mean, in terms of evaluating these options and maybe the consultant as well. So, I mean.
I think they're aware of that.
Well,
I think.
yeah, but I'm not, well, okay,
So-
it's not clear.
So we're gonna vote. So all in favor of the motion to refer the Reed Park Master Plan back to the Parks and Recreation Commission to mitigate the impacts to the American Legion, say aye.
Aye.
I too vote aye. Is opposed? That motion passes. Thank you all for participating tonight. And I hope that you don't overwhelm the Parks and Rec Commission, but you do participate and make your needs known. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you.
I feel like I should be passing this.
They have some on the back table.
Right. Well, I understand.
Okay, so we're going to move to item 11A. This meeting is not over. And if you have something to say to individual council members, I appreciate it if you would do that.
In the corner.
You can hang around until we're all done for another half hour or call us. Our numbers are online. We need to deal with the 11A, the preliminary 2022 fourth quarter financial status and investment report.
Hey, Jerica, good luck.
Unless anyone does anyone need a break?
I wouldn't, well, I don't know if anyone.
Want a snack?
5
minutes?
5 minutes. Thank you.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So whatever the planning commission.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It looks like you could just take the place, road and put it all the way down.
I know you've met with a number of staff, and so, yeah, there are. Yeah.
We've been there about 20.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's easy to say. Difficult.
They tried to cancel.
Done everything that they could to deal with the issue.
Okay, and I can actually.
It's the speeding. It's.
Oh, the mid-section.
Brian.
Right.
You could probably. You want to go up there?
Yeah,
Brad a little bit. We've tried those emphasis, we've tried.
I can take care of it for you.
To a certain age.
I'm just sharing that. So, yeah, I'll come back.
Disturbing the peace is really, really. Speeding, drinking, those kinds of things.
Yep.
Thank you for, the transportation. Very minimal. It's operational. Have a good evening. They got to get out of the, get out there. Oh, work on it.
There's a green space down to Maple.
And so, and that's why we're doing these bins. Orchard bins. You know what I'm talking about? The wood ones. They also have cherry bins. They're lower. So we got access to those. And we're also, this is on the both garden and
One or the other.
orchards. And we got a bunch of these. They like to give them.
The event should drop you off in the park. And then I would like to go down and get.
Yes, but we talked to someone behind.
My son has got first place in the math competition.
You know,
seventh grade.
Right, the simple one, right? She owns that farm. And back. So we're reaching out to her to see if she'll just. All a year. Then we'll need one. But the bins, we can plant in, we can put out there anywhere. And then bring
Hey,
the tops of hand over.
Your idea.
Then it can move. Work with it, put 'em up, move it out. You know, realize, and then there's a space in between on it. Looking up, jobs if you want. And I talked to your engineer. Well, we haven't really decided. Where they are in the process.
Okay, yeah, so I know that,
Well, there was
like
somebody.
through Ryan, which is a public works utility director.
He ran away.
Okay, I can, I'll reach out to you
Yeah, yep.
and talk.
It's been 5 minutes. I didn't look at the time.
Yeah, again, you have to, you know, the city isn't in the business of just, you know, providing private.
Well,
roads and water, so
they did it for the other,
That, and that was an arrangement for original.
That's good.
They've never, and then finished to organize it as a nonprofit.
Very,
So-
very.
So, I mean, we can talk.
yeah,
And
we'll
I
figure
know
it, we'll
that
get, yeah.
locations
And then
and
if we can
stuff.
get, access, and you know, if we separate, you know, what are insurance? There's some other.
Yes.
things.
No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good.
Excuse me, I had to run.
Thank you very much.
Very quick.
I think it's, mother and
I was gonna give you this to throw.
this thing.
I have this that I could.
Even need a cracker.
They wanted that.
Cracker, no.
I'll brief.
Clear. Sure.
You need a cracker?
Are we ready?
We just throw it out, throw it at me. I'm better now. I'll just.
Okay, so we're calling ourselves back to order.
Looks good on a pig, still good.
Order?
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you, thank you. Because that was so orderly.
You didn't use the
Erica.
gavel, though.
I know, I
was
should have, because how many chances do I get?
Good evening, Council and Madam Mayor, Jerry Pasco, Finance Director for the City of Ellensburg. Beginning on page 117 of your agenda report are the preliminary 2022 fourth quarter financial status and investment reports for the period ending December 31st of 2022. The preliminary fourth quarter reports were presented to the Finance Committee at the February 10th, 2023 meeting. December 31st, 2022 figures were calculated as of January 25th, 2023. Staff will continue to make year-end journal entries and adjustments over the next month. Financial statements will be submitted to the State Auditor's Office prior to May 30th. Following the completion of the financial statement audit, staff will present the final 2022 financial status reports to council. So just as a brief description as to why it takes us so long to provide the final statements. Our city is a code cash basis city. So with that, we have 20 days into the new year to book back any expenditures that were incurred during the previous year. Revenues are recorded based on when they are receipted. So the revenues are recorded ending at 12/31. However, we have up until the 20th of January that we push back those expenditures. So that's why your numbers here are through January 25th. We wait till after we run the last claims run of the year, and then we will start a process of what we call truing up our cost allocation. So because we own so many different utilities and have so many different funds throughout the year, we do cost allocation transfers to the different funds for a lot of our general government charges. So say a lot of Heidi's and Terry's and my charges are charged to the general government or the general fund, but throughout the year, we transfer projected cost allocation to the different utilities. Then after the end of the year, after we've done the 20th run in January, we have to true those up. So we have to actually back out all those budgeted cost allocations and do journal entries based on the true cost. So we have to take every single supply transaction that we have for Heidi and disperse it out between all of the different utilities and funds based on a number of metrics. So it takes some time for us to come up with the final statement. So just bear with it. That's why you'll probably see the ending numbers, or I'll call this preliminary, throughout the thing until the financial statements are done and audited. So if we begin with table 1, the general fund expenditures did come in below budget as required. Majority of the general fund, which is minus the managerial funds that you see here, consists of wages and benefits. So a significant portion of the underspending in the general fund here is due to temporarily unfilled positions and understaffing. Revenues did come in slightly over budget. We do have a further breakdown of the general fund departments included on table 7 later that I will talk about. I also wanted to note that it's important for this underspending. If you look at the actuals in the blue and the budget of expenditures in green, this additional underspending is included to be spent in our 23-24 budget. So we were planning for that savings and needed that cushion to balance our 23-24 budget coming up. Table 2 shows year-to-date revenues remitted through the state of Washington. So the revenues ended about 9% over 2021 and about 27% above 2020. However, many of the revenue sources still ended below the 2021, such as our liquor excise taxes, liquor profits, and motor vehicle fuel tax. The significant increases in included from revenues remitted through the state were the sales and use tax and the hotel, motel, and lodging taxes. You might also note that other revenues shows a decrease of 12%, and that's due to a one-time REIT payment that we received in 2021. That was a catch-up from the state. Table 3 shows all the governmental fund tax revenues by type. So overall, the governmental fund tax revenues exceeded the budget by approximately 1.35 million or 7.39%. Hotel motel tax revenue exceeded the pre-COVID levels, finally by quite a bit. The January through December of 2022 revenues were about 15% higher than the January through December 2019 revenues. And hotel motel taxes included there in the other taxes where you see the projected over and under budget of about 26%. When we budgeted hotel motel tax, we stayed very cautionary there just to make sure after COVID, and as you can see, it made a full rebound. Table 4 breaks down the difference of budgeted less projected by tax purpose. So sales tax revenues that you see in these charts here again are received January through December. So they're actually November of 2021 through October of 2022 sales, since there's a 2-month lag from when they're reported to the state and when we receive them. So overall, the sales tax came in just under $1 million, over budget. We're still seeing online sales with the high inflation. However, just recently looking at our December and January sales tax revenue that we received in January and February, we are starting to see a significant cooling already of the spending. So sales tax are still up because prices and inflation are up, but consumption is down. So people are spending more, but receiving less. And we're projected to continue kind of seeing that. But we ended out the year in a positive. Table 5 digs a little bit deeper and shows the sales tax by activity. Overall, we saw an 8% increase over the 2021 revenues. I think through the first part of this year, we are seeing about a 4 to 5%. So we're slowly making that, it's slowly decreasing. Manufacturing showed the highest percentage increase over fourth quarter of 2021, with accommodation and food services again showing the highest dollar increase. Regular retail sales tax revenue, which is the least volatile, it looks like saw an overall increase of 4% over the same period last year. And again, these numbers don't include the 0.03% for criminal justice, or the 0.02 for public transit, or the 0.01 for housing and related services. Table 6 shows our year-to-date utility tax activity. Overall, the utility tax revenue was up by just less than 1%, or only about $33,000 for the year over 2021. However, this is a little misleading still in that in 2021, we received approximately $50,000 of utility taxes for that excess gas storage cell. So we've seen a little bit higher of an increase in the gas than what we're seeing there. But the gas is still down, just not as significantly as it shows. Another notable line here is the gambling tax. It looks like gambling tax was up by about 18%. However, that was due to a payment that we received from a pre-COVID gambling tax debt payment plan that was owed, and they were able to catch up on their gambling taxes from prior to COVID. So table 7 is the general fund revenues and expenditures, the budgeted and projected. Again, this one does not include the managerial funds such as the sales tax reserve fund and COVID funds such as our state and local fiscal recovery funds. So overall in the general fund, the budget less projected, we came in over budget in revenues by about $179,000. All areas came in over budget except for our licenses and permits, and intergovernmental licenses was slightly under budget due to building permit projections and timings there. And intergovernmental came in just under budget, and a lot of that was probably grant revenue that we just didn't receive in 2022 that we probably received in the first part of 2023. The expenditures are by department. You can see we came in under budget by about $2 million there. Again, that's significant because we were projecting that underspending, and that was used for projected fund balance carrying us into the 2023-24 budget. Overall, year to date, the general fund's expenditures exceeded the revenue by about $126,000. This was probably the first year in quite a few years that general fund has actually spent more than what they've received. So now, again, this doesn't include the managerial fund. So this doesn't include the sales tax reserve fund, because the sales tax reserve fund is kept separately because it not only contributes to the regular general fund, but majority of the sales tax funds go to streets, arterial streets, and debt payment. And then one-time projects too. So our debt activities, you'll see that in the rose and green, we did have 2 debt payments, bonds paid off in 2022. The library bond was paid off, so we will no longer be collecting that separate portion of property tax for that bond. And the water fund also paid off a utility bond from 2013. Highlighted in yellow is the water and sewer bond from 2020. It was on a draw period, and their draw period ended on November 30th of 2022. So they made the final draw on that bond. So it now has a balance of 10 million. The table on the next page, the revenues and expenditures actuals, shows that the city brought in at approximately 14.9 million before, or more than it spent in 2022 year to date. I should note too that I've highlighted there in green, the general fund up at the very top, or in blue, the general funds up at the very top, and then the other ones highlighted in blue are the managerial funds of the general fund. So when I talk about the total general fund, it's including those funds. So of the 14.99 million, 9.66 million of the excess of revenue over expenditures was from utilities and internal service funds. The water and sewer utilities made those revenue bond draws of approximately 2.7 million in June and 5.2 million in November. The general fund, including the managerial funds, saw a net gain of about 3.87 million. However, 2.73 million of that can be contributed to receiving the second half of our state and local fiscal recovery funds, or previously called the American Rescue Act, or ARPA funds. Overall, you can see most of the funds ended up in the positive. There's a few there negative, which are timing wise and our expected arterial street and traffic impact. A lot of that is revenue generated by sales tax too, and it's dependent on project timing payment cycles. So those are funds that we build up and then spend down. The drug fund doesn't have much of a revenue source anymore. Those are from seizures, and then they're used to purchase. Park acquisition fund has been built up to spend down, and the other significant one is the stormwater, and that was from a previous bond that they received, and they have been working on and paying on the project now. So that's why you see that big decrease there. As far as investments, the city had around 80.7 million in excess cash invested at the end of the year. 59.8 million of that was in LGIP, or the local government investment pool, which I've talked about before is really short term and is very liquid. We can move that back and forth. The LGIP was up to 4.13% at the end of fourth quarter, which is really unheard of. You know, last year at this time, it was less than 0.1%. So we try to keep any of our daily excess cash in that. However, we are still purchasing 1 to 5 year investments as our other investments mature, to help diversify. And because we don't want to end up with, when short-term rates take a dive, we don't want to end up with no longer term investments with higher yields. So we did purchase another 2.5 million in 3 to 5 years this last month. I know right now the short-term rates are actually higher than long-term rates. So the yield curve is inverted, which usually again is a sign in the future of recession and coming up. So they've been inverted for some time now. So that's why we're seeing a significant increase in our short-term yields. So I guess staff recommends council accept the fourth quarter 2022 financial status reports and investment reports as presented, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council, do you have questions for Pasco? We all want to go home.
Me too.
Motion to accept the fourth quarter financial report.
Oh, is there anyone who would like to speak to this issue? Thank you. Now go.
Motion to accept the fourth quarter financial report.
Second.
Motion and second to accept the preliminary 2022 fourth quarter financial report as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Who will vote aye? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Heidi Behrens, Turnaway, your city manager. Just a quick read down the list that is in your packet. Dollar Way closure began today and will likely run 5 to 6 weeks. So we can finish the paving and sidewalks and curbs on the bridge. And so notices have been out and we've had the variable message reader boards out as well on both ends of the project. So keep that on your list of places to avoid. State of the Community address and the launch of the Economic Development Plan tomorrow night at the Hotel Windrow. It is free. It is open to the public and it starts officially at 6 p.m. and will last probably a couple of hours. At your next meeting, there will be a closed record hearing for actually 2 closed record hearings for appeals for COAs related to Unity Park and the demo of the bank building. And then just a reminder, and we'll continue to publish this at the next meeting too. On March 28th, we're going to be hosting an open house. The Ad hoc Committee on Homelessness, which has been a joint effort by the county and the city and a number of nonprofits and service organizations looking to identify and to remedy or address some of the gaps on services and infrastructure on homelessness, talking specifically about a sleep center and we'll have a number of nonprofits talking about the services that they provide and how we work together. So that'll be here at City Hall in this building and again, March 28th. One addition you have on the dais, this is something that we started last year. We're going to continue doing this. This is your full report that comes to you from your departments about all the things we do in the city. So if you think, if you need some extra reading, there's lots of information in here and we actually included based on questions from last year, making sure that we have the little assessment and work that our boards and commissions do, because that's a tremendous amount of work that our staff support that we do. So lots of work, wonderful work, and lots of really great accomplishments. We will take this information and we're going to be doing a mailed newsletter out to the community. We'd like to get that out before mid-April, before tax day. That's always my goal. And so we're working and that'll be a little better styled than just a single page. This is on the website and we keep this is our starting point. And so appreciate all the work that our staff do across this city and also just the opportunity to tell our story. This is one of the things that we'll continue to do. So, and then finally, you all received a message, an extended message, the Clean Energy Transformation Act. We're doing, the State Auditor's Office is doing an audit on our compliance with CETA. So you've received an invitation. Please let me know if you're coming. I know our 2 UAC members have been invited specifically, but it is open to council. So please let me know. We'll have to do a meeting notice, a public meeting notice if we have a quorum. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Taking a temperature, do you guys want to do council reports or skip it?
I don't have anything to report.
No report for me.
Okay. I'd like to request an excused absence for the next meeting.
So move.
Second.
Motion and second to excuse Councilmember Monica Miller for the next meeting.
Gotcha. Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
2 will vote aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Have fun wherever you'll be. So, most adjourned. We're adjourned.
Thank you.